So let's go over binge eating. We're going to talk about causations. We're going to talk about solutions to help you or those who need aid and an intervention when it does come to binge eating. I will be giving a lot of recommendations that I utilize with my clients as well that has drastically helped them to look for signs of binge eating and aid in binge eating. So some causations of binge eating disorder, BED. Number one, we're going to be looking at biological factors, and this falls into genetic behavior, family disorders, imbalances in brain chemicals like serotonin that regulate appetite and mood, hormone influences like fluctuations in estrogen and progesterone. Now, when it comes to biological factors and genetics and family, we could see this along the lines of people with alcoholism or who have drug abuse. We'll talk about social behaviors after. That is a different topic in its own that's separated from biological factors. Imbalances in brain chemicals that regulate appetite, absolutely. You could be having hormonal issues, which is why it's very important to get biochemical markers taken, labs, to see that your hormones are regulated, everything is functioning properly, because it could be an unconscious behavior or an unconscious craving, if you will. I don't like using that word, but we'll use that word for this sake, where maybe hormones are causing you to act a certain way. And this could be related with maybe you're having a hormonal imbalance and food is your solution. Maybe you have low testosterone and you're having all of these symptoms of low T where you're emotional, you're depressed, and that's going to cause and lead you to finding some type of comfort. And for a lot of people, eating is a huge comfort. Some physiological factors: depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, using food to cope with negative emotions or stress, having a quote, all or nothing mentality around eating, history of trauma or abuse. This is kind of relating to what I just said, where negative emotions or stress reliever, and finding happiness could just be with eating. That's a little bit more on the solo side when you are alone. Depression and anxiety, again, that could relate to hormonal issues, but in it of itself, maybe you just had something stressful go through your life, a loved one pass away or something like that, and you result to eating. Low self-esteem is another one. Maybe you're already overweight from childhood that you didn't have control over, and now maybe you're trying to manage the weight distribution or body composition, and low self-esteem of just looking in your mirror makes you feel hopeless, so you just continue a repetitive cycle of binge eating. All or nothing mentality. This is one I have been guilty of, but it's because when I was younger, I was not forced, but always told to eat everything on my plate. And so now I'm 33 years old. I still have that mentality, and I have to tell myself that it is okay that I'm full. It's okay that I don't need to devour my whole plate if I'm already satisfied. So that is another one I've seen with a few individuals. Our third factor is going to be social and environmental factors. Social pressures and body image concerns, repeated cycles of dieting and food restriction, exposure to weight stigma or fat shaming, easy access to high-calorie palatable foods. Social pressures is the number one factor I will probably be discussing. I see it amongst so many clients. Social pressures, I see it more so. That's a bigger population than, let's say, people binge eating at home alone. When you're out socially, that may be the only time when you get to seek pleasure. You're interactive, you're around other people are eating, it makes you happy. So you're riding kind of this level of dopamine, if you will. And dopamine is associated with just eating terrible foods. And it doesn't even necessarily need to be a binge. I think when we think of binge, we think of volumization of food, when a binge could just be a terrible choice of food for some people. I don't think people associate the terrible choices of food along with binge eating when that could be a factor. It's kind of like having a bodybuilder and they're so strict, and then after a competition, they go into binge eat with just terrible food. I don't think it would necessarily be considered binge eating if they overate on fruit or if they overate on something healthy. Right? We kind of want to make connections here of, okay, binge eating is associated with pretty much terrible foods. I mean, I've never seen somebody binge eat fruits. I've never seen somebody binge eat oatmeal or, chicken and rice or steak and potatoes. those kinds of things. It's always going to be high palatable foods like we discussed previously. It's going to be high carbohydrates, high fat content, ice cream, cookies, those sorts of things. Pastas, what have you, just very calorically dense food that also tastes good. But social pressures is the biggest aspect I worked with clients, because anytime that they're out, when I do check-ins with clients, there's always going to be somebody every week, even multiple people, where I went out and I had In-N-Out and a burger, or I went out, I did this. That's not that big of a deal when we're trying to lose weight, or we have a goal weight or goal physique we're trying to obtain. That stuff's going to happen. That's absolutely normal. And there's nothing to worry about in that avenue. But when you have a subject that's going out, they're obliterating food, meaning eating multiple times in a day. And I would include alcohol in that, because it's a very harmful chemical for the body to excrete. A huge event, you go to a wedding and you're eating all day, and then you go to the wedding and you're binge eating terrible foods, and then you're also consuming large amounts of alcohol. That could be considered an episode of binge eating. It just depends on everyone's lifestyle. For a lot of people, that's just normal. It's kind of a factor that nobody else wants to talk about, is the normality of how bad the American diet and also structure of the American diet is. The day-to-day eating, the things we are eating and choosing to eat instead of making conscious, healthy choices. Social pressures, I think it's one of the biggest aspects when it comes to binge eating. When you go on a binge eating episode and it's social, you're not alone at home by yourself, where it's a little bit more of a depressing setting. When you're out with other people and you slam the alcohol and you're slamming the pasta or whatever it may be, but you're having frequent episodes of this. You're doing this Thursday, Friday, Saturday. When you're doing it like that, it doesn't seem bad because it's a social pressure. Come on, man, just break your diet. Come on, man, just have the alcohol with me. And then you associate that with crap, I just messed up. So you could possibly create a reoccurring cycle of this, where you're going out on purpose because you know you're gonna break your food control habits that you're trying to get control over. So social pressures is a huge factor for a lot of people. And I think it could be subconscious for a lot of people. And I think people kind of don't take that into account or too seriously, because it's associated with family. It's associated with friends. It's okay. People are watching me do it and they're not saying anything. So it's okay for me to do that. Repeated cycles of dieting and food restriction. This falls right in line with bodybuilding. I've been guilty of this many a times. It's the up and down food cycling. You will hear more females, bikini athletes speak upon this, where they have to diet down severely hard. A majority of bodybuilders have to diet down severely hard to get in shape. And I have had clients where after we step off stage, they're texting me from their hotel room, I'm throwing up because I'm eating so much. Because you're going from famine to feast like that. So you're going from starving yourself to get stage lean, and then, oh, I'm off stage, the comp's done, let me just obliterate as much food as I can, and you end up throwing up in the bathroom because your stomach can't handle the volume or the types of food that you're eating. Another factor is co-occurring conditions. Another eating disorder like bulimia nervosa, obesity, substance abuse disorders, mood disorders like depression, bipolar disorder, the food addiction model. Some propose binge eating is driven by an addictive process with highly palatable foods. So highly palatable foods, yeah, I think that's more, again, that could be related to being more structured in the American diet. Everybody always talks about how bad our food is, but nothing's really being done about it. And a majority of the people who talk about how bad food is, you shouldn't eat this because they say this, are typically overweight people or people in the obesity range. They do feel as though they want to have some type of authority over people, even though consciously they know that they are overweight and out of shape. It's almost like a defense mechanism where if I tell people this is really bad to eat, maybe they think I'm health conscious about myself, but they're just eating a terrible diet and just have a lack of energy output to have any control over their weight distribution. So here we have a study. This is a cross-sectional study, examined the prevalence of binge eating disorder, BED, and associated factors in 514 obese adults seeking weight loss treatments at a specialist obesity treatment center in Germany. 21.4% of participants met this criteria for full syndrome binge eating disorder based on the diagnostic interviews. The authors concluded that binge eating disorder, BED, and subjective binge eating are highly preventable in adults seeking weight loss treatment. Bed was related to greater obesity severity, psychiatric comorbidities, impaired quality of life, and internalized weight bias. So this is kind of showing how people a little bit in the older range have a more associated syndrome of bed. This could be like give or take. I know this is done in Germany, so it's not really based in America where we're a little bit heavier over here, but it does show a correlation with a mental health quality of life being in related with binge eating disorder. So in this study, they had 425 participants, and they wanted to measure comparing cognitive behavioral therapy for binge eating disorder. So at the end of this treatment, the behavior therapy for binge eating resulted significantly higher binge eating abstinence rates compared to behavior weight loss treatment. Even after the study was concluded, 4 to 12 months, a follow-up was done with these subjects because there were so many between 4 to 12 months. And the behavioral therapy maintained a higher binge abstinence rate at 59% versus the weight loss treatment. The weight loss treatment was at 33% after this study had concluded. The authors concluded that while the weight loss treatment produced greater initial weight loss, the behavior therapy was superior for achieving binge eating abstinence in the short and long term. So this is a really good resource to seek cognitive behavior therapy if you are going through binge eating disorders, and sometimes it doesn't even have to be that severe with the classified binge eating clinical terminology. If you know consciously that you are possibly having a tough time just controlling your eating, it doesn't have to be these huge spells of food and consuming volumized food. You could just be simply not being able to control yourself and your impulses or making good, healthy, conscious decisions. And that is something behavior therapy could possibly help you with. So moving on to some people that I have worked with personally, where they hired me as a nutritionist to aid them in losing weight through diet intervention. So when you are working with somebody, you go through a few weeks where you start to notice trends once, twice a week. These subjects are breaking their diet. What you do want to have is full transparency. One thing that allows me to do one-on-one coaching as a nutritionist with my clients is the amount of transparency that we have with each other, where these subjects, they hire me in secret, kind of. Nobody really knows. Their family, their friends don't know that they're working with me. It's not like they're going to the gym and working with a personal trainer or something like that. They're hiring me as a professional to aid them. Through working through online, we're able to keep that secret. There's tons of athletes that I've coached, NFL athletes that I've coached that keep me secret because they don't want word to get out that they needed help with dieting. So one thing I've done, and I've even experimented it with myself back when I was bodybuilding and I was going through up and downs with food, was just simply doing a 24-hour fast. I am not a huge fan of intermittent fasting. I think daily intermittent fasting actually causes binge eating, especially when you're forcing a person to, hey, you're only allowed to eat for 4 hours a day. Sometimes that forces people to create a binge eating disorder that they actually never even had of in the first place. If you're restraining your eating window 6 hours a day, 5 hours a day, and you're doing it consciously, it forces you, oh, I need to eat as much food as I can in this time period before my time's up. That can drastically cause a binge eating disorder. For a lot of people, they could do it perfectly fine, and it is a great tool for them. It's very subject dependent in how people react with their behavior towards a fad diet, towards diet restriction, towards anything dietary related. Being able to do a 24-hour fast where I only do coffee and I only do water the whole day allows me to understand hunger signaling. I think that's something that people kind of cut out, especially if you're trying to follow a diet, especially if you're having episodes of uncontrolled eating. You need to understand hunger cues, and just doing a 24-hour fast is going to allow you to realize, okay, I'm hungry now. And then once you reach a certain amount of time, you're like, I'm no longer hungry. Around 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, you realize you're just not hungry anymore the whole day. Doing a 24-hour fast, like today, if you stop eating at 3 p.m., you simply eat again tomorrow at 3 p.m. You know, you just did a 24-hour fast. It allows me to understand when I'm hungry, and most importantly, it allows me to understand, oh, I don't need food as much as I think I do, especially if you're at a higher percent of body fat. I've done this with a few other clients. It didn't 100% solve their eating problems, but it did keep them on track for multiple months. I could confidently say when they did have those next binge eating episodes, it was socially. It wasn't alone, which is a little bit different. So they went from binge eating alone to now kind of just breaking their diet out socially for events and stuff like that. That's a huge progress and step forward after doing just one 24-hour fast, because it allows you to understand a lot about yourself, again with your hunger cues, and again saying, oh, I'm not craving food that much. I'm really not that hungry and I haven't eaten all day. It just allows you to get a surrounding thought process over how your body feels, that it is not necessary to overeat, most importantly. One really good factor. Another factor we could utilize to control hunger, so to speak. Let's say a subject is having binge eating episodes. We could take this subject and only give them very high fiber and very high protein foods. It does become extremely difficult to overeat on those foods. So I think even making a very small step, if a person doesn't want to go to therapy, if a person doesn't want any outside help, one thing that they could do on their own is, if they're going into a depressive state, if they're going into a stressful state, if they're consciously aware that I'm going to binge eat, which sometimes people are consciously aware of what they're doing. Even if you're mindlessly eating, watching Netflix, you can make a healthier choice. You could choose high fiber foods. You could choose popcorn. You know how hard it is to eat so much popcorn where it actually impacts your weight? Another factor is adding high fiber and high protein foods. Try to overeat on steak alone. Your jaw is going to get so tired before you even do anything else. Another one is, again, like I say, the fruits. Go buy a family pack of fruit where it has the watermelon, the pineapple, the strawberry, all that stuff in there. And at least you're hydrating yourself when you're having these episodes, or you feel like you're going to go off the rails away from your healthy lifestyle of eating or controlled diet. It's very hard to consume a high volume of low calorie, high water, high protein, high fiber foods without getting stuffed at some point. And maybe you're one of those people that can just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. The better option is to go with low calorie foods. And I'm not saying this is the end all be all, but it's just it's a better step and weight controlled. And maybe it won't make you feel so guilty by, okay, I'm going to go kill a burger, fries, shake, and then after I'm going to go eat a pint of ice cream. It's way better. That option is way better than the destructive, high calorie, high fat, high carbohydrate, bad choices of food that you're consciously aware of. Even if you know that you're going to go off the rails, just make a better food choice. Get popcorn, eat 100 grams of oatmeal, eat 2 steaks, eat something like that that's going to make your mouth, your jaw more tired. High fiber foods that's going to fill your stomach up like crazy before you even hit a caloric firewall, if you will. Those are other avenues throw into the mix to aid us in just taking those smaller steps. Again, it's not a conclusive solution. It's not. It starts off with behavior therapy, understanding maybe what's triggering you to do this, maybe the stress, the depression, the hormonal issues, the social factors is the bigger one. Those things are the topics of what you need to get control of. You know, if you try it out on your own, there's nothing wrong with trying to do it on your own first, because you know you best, and working that out with yourself and understanding, okay, this doesn't work, maybe this works, maybe this works. Maybe go seek therapy for a professional that could dig deep into the causations of, you know, what is possibly causing this behavioral issue for you. But that's going to wrap up this discussion on binge eating for causations and solutions. Until the next one, I'll see you guys later.